All right, another spark and another build. Step into the Forge with us. Welcome back to the Forge, Deep Divers. Today, we're not just talking about a new Titan or a new tool. We're talking about a fundamental break in reality itself.
But before we shatter the rules, let's remember what they are. You've just sat down across from your opponent. The field is clear. The potential is infinite. You might be wondering,
So how do you play tools and Titans? Easy. Draw your cards. Charge your energy. Build your field. Act with your powers. Clash with your Titans. End your turn. 6 steps. One epic battle.
that's the rhythm of the game, the 6-step pulse of every match. But let's look closer at that pulse. Each step isn't just an action, it's a philosophy. All right, let's set the stage. We now enter the realm of the uncertain, the unrecorded, and the unresolved. This is the home of the Mythborn.
The Mythborn, also known as the Unique Eight. These aren't Titans forged in the heart of a guild. They're not Rustborn, twisted by corruption. They aren't even beasts or primordials. They are echo-born archetypes, paradoxical legends,
And dream-forged entities that exist somewhere between reality and myth. The lore is fascinating. They are narrative anomalies, fused from 2 distinct halves, 50% Titan identity and 50% Echo Dream aberration.
Let's pause on that idea. A 50-50 split. That's not like a Rustborn, who is a corrupted version of a whole. This is 2 different things fused together. A conscious being that is half real, half story. Can you imagine that existence? A constant internal contradiction.
The lore suggests they remember it. They have flashes of being just a concept, a whisper in a story, before they were pulled into reality. It makes them unpredictable. A tool Titan acts from purpose, a Rustborn from corrupted purpose, a primordial from raw instinct. But a Mythborn? They might act based on the logic of a dream.
And that makes them terrifying to face. How do you plan against an opponent whose win condition might be based on a forgotten fairy tale? Let's name them. Let's put faces to these concepts.
They are Ascendra, Gildara, Shrenalis, Eckozin, Mythera, Bastilorn, Chronova, and Weavaris. 8 conceptual titans that completely defy classification. Each one emerged not from birth or construction, but from a story half told, a legend that was never completed, or a weave echo that simply refused to fade.
So they're conscious contradictions. They have the semblance of a Titan, personality, abilities, a function on the battlefield. But the other half is just pure story, pure dream.
Exactly. They're shaped by forgotten myths, ghost guilds, or anomalies in the weave itself. They often appear in what the lore calls paradox zones, phantom campaigns, or even timeline-inverted events. They are, in essence, the Titans who never should have been, but are.
That's a heavy concept. So if they aren't from a trade or a guild, what do they represent? What's their purpose in the grand design of the game?
They represent anomalous identity. They are born from memory, belief, or pure illusion, not from a tangible trade or a physical form. Think of it as echo theory made manifest, an idea that became so strong it simply became real.
And that has to have a huge impact on the game board.
Oh, it does. They represent meta-narrative power. They are capable of disrupting the very rules of the game, changing phases, altering identities, and messing with the turn structure mid-game. They are wildcard narrative agents, each one representing a forgotten story arc, a dead trade, or a conceptual loophole in the weave.
So they're not from the past or the future?
They are from the what-if, the almost, and the never was, but still is.
Okay, so where, or rather when, did these storytelling glitches pop into existence?
The lore says the Mythborn appeared across various time distortions, most notably after the Great Fracture at Clockwork Vale. They were also sighted during an event called the Shrine of 12 Vale State, which is a story for another day.
And you mentioned Echo Wells?
Yes, and when the Echo Wells began broadcasting forgotten archetypes across the world, some were believed to be tools that literally dreamed themselves into becoming titans. Others, like the Mythborn named Mythera, were simply recurring folktales that suddenly began showing up as real, tangible effects on the battlefield.
Their existence is a glitch of storytelling. I love that. They were imagined so vividly that they couldn't stay unreal. It's a reminder that no matter how complex the board state gets, or how strange these new beings are, it all comes back to the same core loop.
Exactly. And for all their reality-bending power, they still operate within the turn. Every Titan turn, draw, charge, building, act, clash, end. 6 steps, infinite ways to forge your victory.
So if they're born from ideas, where do they live? You can't exactly visit a folktale.
You can't. The Mythborn reside in what are called dream sanctums, echo folds, or memory-locked paradoxes. For example, Ascendra is tied to a place called the Spiral Shrine That Never Ascended. Gildara exists in the echo of a guild that never was. And Chronova, she is from the loop that learned to think.
So these aren't physical places you can put on a map.
Precisely. They are states of being. They're often only visible or accessible during unstable weave surges, specific dream events, or within phase-drifted timelines during a campaign.
Which brings us to the big question for players. Why do they matter? Why should I put a Mythborn in my deck?
Because they introduce mechanics you can't find anywhere else. We're talking about illusion recursion, dream sequence mechanics, and even semi-visible task cards that your opponent can't fully decipher. They enable phase-misaligned decks.
Decks that reward timing deception, baiting your opponent into traps, and using memory-based effects. Effects that trigger based on what your opponent did last turn.
Yes, and in the player versus environment campaigns, they are critical. They act as campaign hinges, unlocking paradox paths, shrine reconnection story arcs, and forgotten boss fights. They are the ultimate tool for players who favor disruption, story-based combos, and what the designers call illusion tempo control.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's profile these 8 enigmas. What are the unique systems that make them tick?
Let's start with their shared mechanics. Their core is EchoForm recursion. This allows their cards to return from the junkyard, but as illusions or faded variants. Things don't stay gone. Then, hidden task zones. These are cards you set face down, revealed by a specific trigger. It creates immense psychological pressure.
And then there are fade-based loops and illusion casts, delayed triggers that resolve in the future, and spells that look like one thing but do another. It's a full suite of misdirection. Now, how do the individuals use these tools? Let's go down the list one by one.
First up, Ascendra, the unascended apex. Her role is alt-victory catalyst. Her unique mechanic is the task constellation trigger. Imagine completing a series of specific tasks that, when viewed together on the board, form a pattern, a constellation. Once the pattern is complete, she fulfills her story, and you win. No combat needed.
Next, Gildara, the lost guild heart, the bait controller. Her hidden tasks aren't just delayed effects, they're traps. For example, a hidden task might read, when your opponent targets Gildara with a cast, negate it and they discard a card. She baits you into wasting resources. She punishes interaction.
Then we have Shrinalis, the Forgotten Sealkeeper. Her focus is shrine synergy. The game has locations called shrines or seals. Shrinalis autocasts abilities based on how many you control, or even when one of your opponent's seals fails. She turns the battlefield itself into her engine.
What about EchoZen, the voiceless pulse? Her role is tempo reset. This is one of the wildest mechanics. Under certain conditions, like after a massive combo from an opponent. EchoZen can trigger a pulse that resets the game state. Not a full reset, but it might return all Titans to their owner's hands, or reset the turn clock, effectively making the current round start over. It's an emergency brake on reality.
Mythera is next. The myth that dreams, she's a recursion story engine. Her cards have narrative links. You might play a task called The First Step. When it completes, it lets you search your deck for The Perilous Journey. Complete that, and you get The Final Revelation, an effect of game-winning power. She makes you play through a story.
Bastalorn, the Broken Tool Reforged. This one is fascinating. It's a self-assembly Titan. Bastalorn might start as a simple tool card in your hand. You play it, and at the end of your turn, it evolves, becoming a structure. A few turns later, that structure evolves again, becoming the full-fledged Titan Bastalorn. It literally builds itself on the field over time.
Now for the true time bender, Chronova, the time loop made real. Her specialty is turn loop disruption. She creates desync zones on the field. Any card played in that zone might resolve at the end of the turn, or even at the start of your next turn. She can also ghost cast, replaying an effect that happened 3 turns ago. She dismantles the linear flow of time.
And finally, Weavaris, the Signal Dreamer, the cast reflection specialist. Weavaris doesn't just copy opponents' spells. She reflects and integrates them. If your opponent plays a powerful chain of 3 cards, Weavaris might have an ability that lets you trigger the second effect in that chain during your own turn. She hijacks the opponent's own synergy and turns it against them. So with all this power to bend the rules, let's talk strategy. What are their overall strengths?
Their biggest strength is nonlinear disruption. They completely rewrite how your opponent thinks the game is supposed to flow. They also have the best recursion loop potential in the game, outside of the mighty primordials. We call it echo dominance.
And they seem very flexible.
Extremely. They have hybrid utility. They can flex between illusion control, resource recursion, and that unique narrative-style gameplay. And of course, their alternate win condition viability is a huge strength.
But they must have weaknesses. A force this strange can't be unbeatable.
Absolutely. Their most glaring weakness is a lack of consistent aggression. They cannot win a straightforward damage race. They have to win by causing misalignment, by tricking you with illusions, or by outlasting you with recursion.
They're also complex. This doesn't sound like a beginner's deck.
Not at all. They are very hard to learn. The mechanics are based on hidden information, delayed triggers, and conditional effects. Their decks can also suffer from transparency. Once an experienced player knows your strategy, they lose a lot of their power.
And I imagine they have a slow start.
A very slow start curve. Many of their most powerful effects require several turns to come online. And finally, they are heavily countered by decks that specialize in revealing hidden cards or sealing off abilities. Factions like the Preservants can be a nightmare matchup.
So how does a Mythborn player handle these different matchups? What about against a fast, aggressive deck that's trying to win by turn 4?
Against aggro, a Mythborn player is on the defensive. They have to use their illusion and bait mechanics to stall, creating an illusionary blocker that an opponent wastes an attack on, playing a hidden trap that punishes the opponent for playing more than one Titan. It's about survival until their late-game engine comes online.
And against a slow, grinding control deck? It feels like their strategy is similar.
It is, but the focus shifts. Against control, it's a war of resources. The control deck wants to remove every threat. But the Mythborn's strength is EchoForm recursion. You can't kill what won't stay in the junkyard. The Mythborn player wins by simply outvaluing the control player's removal, bringing back threats again and again until the opponent runs out of answers.
And the mirror match? Mythborn versus Mythborn.
That has to be one of the most cerebral matches in all of Tools and Titans. It's a complete mind game. Both players are trying to parse hidden information. Both are setting delayed triggers. It becomes a game of layered predictions. I think you think I'm going to trigger this trap, so I'm actually going to play around it by triggering this other fade-based loop. It's chess, but all the pieces are invisible.
So what is the ultimate place for the Mythborn in the lore? Are they a threat to the world? Or just a new part of it?
That's the central question the game's story is asking. The established guilds see them with fear and suspicion. You can't control a story, you can't sign a treaty with a paradox. Some factions, like the tech-focused Formants Guild, are actively trying to study and capture them, to understand the glitch they represent. Others, like the nature-revering Preservants, see them as a sign that the weave itself is becoming unstable, a dangerous omen.
They truly are the ultimate wildcards. They represent a belief so strong that it manifests as pure, reality-bending disruption. They are the stories the world forgot. And now, that world must remember them, or risk being rewritten by them. The Mythborn are more than just a faction. They are a question posed to the player. What are the rules? And what is a story? And which one is more powerful?
They prove that even in a game of strategy and structure, a forgotten dream can change everything. From the first card you draw to the final clash, they are there, waiting in the echo.
In every match of Tools and Titans, your tradecraft unfolds in 6 simple moves. Draw, charge, building act, clash, end.
Simplicity for the novice, mastery for the titan.